Now on Most Buffalo, a storm named Sandy, a city hall scandal, and a landmark lost. It all made news this very week in decades past. And Channel 2's Dave McKinley is looking back when all of that and more was news to you.
10 years ago this week, though technically no longer a hurricane, when Sandy hit downstate New York as a post-tropical cyclone, it still packed enough punch to cause billions in damage from flooding and high winds, some of which is yet to be repaired a decade later. The Sabres season wasn't off to a hot start. In fact, it did not start due to an NHL players lockout.
Would you like a little more positive news? Here it is. There are no new talks scheduled. Just wonderful. Thanks a lot.
Back then, just as right now,
New Yorkers pay the most in state and local taxes in the country.
Apple introduced its first iPad mini, and everyone, it seemed, even at the UN, was going Gangnam Style this week in 2012. 20 years ago this week, the long arm of the law finally caught up with the D.C. sniper, whose 10-week reign of terror resulted in 10 deaths and ended with the arrests of John Allen Muhammad and his teen accomplice, Lee Boyd Malvo. Muhammad was put to death by lethal injection 7 years later. Malvo continues to serve multiple life sentences. That same week, and closer to home,
the arraignment was over in a matter of minutes.
At the arraignment for a half-dozen Yemeni Americans from Lackawanna, accused of being part of a terrorist sleeper cell and who eventually pled guilty to providing material support to al-Qaeda and who would forever become known as the Lackawanna Six. Among the first classes of TSA agents were sworn into duty at the Buffalo airport. Your telephone still looked like this, and we did our very first story about a group of young people from Western New York seeking fame and fortune by trying out for a new TV show called American Idol, this week in 2002. 30 years ago this week, a landmark lost.
Quite frankly, I feel like crying.
This week's News to You pop quiz. Do you know what this is? A familiar center of fond family memories for generations of Western New Yorkers, which burned to the ground this week in 1992. Here's a hint. Firefighters did not have to go far to find water in their futile efforts to quell the flames. Meanwhile, a City Hall scandal culminated with the conviction of Buffalo Parks Commissioner Bob Delano on federal racketeering charges for running the department like his personal piggy bank. Delano was later sentenced to serve 2 years in federal prison. This was back when Dennis Vacco served as the U.S. Attorney for Western New York and looked like this. Not like this, and when developer Carl Palladino didn't look like this, but more like that guy on the right of your screen back in the days when it was all news to you.
Thank you, David. And here's the answer to the News to You pop quiz. We asked if you recognize this local landmark destroyed by fire 30 years ago this week. It was the Beaver Island Casino. Though feared lost forever, 10 years and $10 million later, the state rebuilt it, and it stands today as the Falconwood and serves as a place for banquets and other events.